Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities show. On today's show, we are going to do an in-depth review of the ES and all the goings on there. We're going to do a deep dive on all the grains, wheat, corn, and soybean. And if you stick around till the end, in the last segment, we're going to show you a new way how to use the squares that we haven't covered before. It's really
hmm
fascinating and very cool. My name is Ben Maldonado, and as always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. How we doing, Barry?
Doing good, doing good. It's one of those
Well,
U-turn weeks. Everything kind of made a
yeah,
U-turn.
yep, choppy, but there's a direction. So without any further delay, let's dive into our in-depth analysis of ES because there's a lot going on.
I always had to pick up where we left off, and we left off last week with this 5104, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
And I said, if we get on top of it, then we should probably get to 5200, and there's not a whole lot getting in the way. And we talked about how that's a big range.
And look what it's doing today. The low looks
Well,
like it's right around your 5104.
yeah, it's right there, and it's it's a strong day.
Hmm.
And it all started with, the low coming in at this 50% of the square.
Hmm.
And then we made this higher low. And
Hmm.
then this week we made it higher low,
Again.
even further
Hmm.
higher. So, and now, today we made a higher high. So clearly we're moving in this direction. So is this still sort of a corrective leg? I would say yes, until the high is taken out. So why is this high a big deal? And if you guys remember, great. If not, I can do a quick review. And the
There's a
quick,
lot of cycles that hit long-term stuff hit right in there.
yeah. So the big review is, there's a lot of different cycles hit right up in at that high. The exact high was May 21st. Wink, wink. And we're also 144 up from the high. We squared out. And when we got to the 50% of the square, we said, we're looking for some support. It is 50% of a square, and that's normally a good place for sort of a bounce. And we got the bounce, and we're still bouncing
Hmm.
um, while we're making higher lows. Now, last week, I talked about we talked about, how far can these go? Can they go? Is it, if you want to measure it in degrees and squares instead of points, a lot of people measure with percentages and points,
Hmm.
and that's fine. So I was looking at, and last week, I said, normally using this square, the market likes to, if it's not a quarter of a square, it's usually 3/8 that the market likes to go.
Hmm.
And then I pointed at this level. This is the SPX, by the way. It's the cash market. Talked about this 5180 level being roughly 3/8 from the 50% of the square. Of
Hmm.
course, the low was just a tad lower. So, we could be just a little bit tad lower up here if it's going to make it exactly 3/8. We don't know, but that would be around 5175. And today I was just messing around looking at this, and well, there's a Gartley happening here.
There's an ABCD for
There's
sure.
ABC, and perfect Gartley. I mean,
Hmm.
if this were to be a high, this would be just about right.
You talk
Perfect.
about fat pitches, right?
Exactly, because what are we doing? We have a Gartley in the works, and the thing is, then I kind of wanted to see, well, where is it going?
Right to your spot.
Exactly. So I didn't know it last week, but and it turns out
There it
go
is.
right into that 3/8. I mean, if that happens, great. Usually the market, it's always give or take a little bit.
Right. It'll be a little short to throw people off, or it'll be a
Hmm.
little over to throw people off, but
Yep.
there's
But
your
we
target.
know the range, we're right in
Yeah.
there. And you can see a
Yeah.
lot of these ABC that we talked about, I don't know, 2 or 3 episodes ago, we made it we talked about how many, these Gartleys we're seeing in,
In different markets.
yeah, and different markets, so many of them. And today, this week, we'll cover some of that, some of those markets that showed up
Hmm.
with the ABCDs. So going into next week, this is the key thing to watch. We want to watch the movement Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, getting up into this 5180 area
Hmm.
and see if we stall there and we get some kind of reversal. That's what I'd be looking for. And of course, we get that other scenario where, we can go on to make new highs. It's always a possibility, which means there's much bigger cycles pushing it up.
Hmm.
And that's fine. But for me to be convinced of that, we'd really have to settle above 5180 and at least take out this ABCD. I know there are 618 projections and everything up here. and Fibonacci never runs out. So, we can if we go that route, their targets all the way up and down the ladder. Know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yes.
so let's just stick with the 3/8 for now. And I'm saying if it gets above that, we could probably expect a challenge
The
of the
cash
high,
eyes.
the
Yeah.
cash highs, and I mean, the next best thing to a Gartley terminating some kind of a huge move would be some kind of a false break. So, I mean, that's
Amen.
possible too, right?
Yep. Yep.
So, so that's the cash. Here's the Dow. We talked about, we've started looking at the Dow just a little bit. And we talked about last week, we're holding above the 90. As long as we can kind of manage to hold above that, the push is really to the upside. And this week, even though we kind of balanced on the 90, we ended up pushing higher after Wednesday. So getting back to our futures chart, I left off with the 5104 last week. We talked about 5200. And, there isn't a whole lot to argue against that because we're doing exactly that. We look for support at the 50% of the square. We got that. Higher low, great. Are we going to clear 5104? Sure thing. We did today. We got the low came in on 5104. And now we're moving higher. So it'd be a shame if we just can't get and go up and tap that at least. Now that we've got, all this good news pulling people into the market, right? That's really what I have for the daily. There isn't a whole lot. It's kind of sort of playing by the script.
Where does your ABCD go on the ES? What's
well, that's a good
it's like
question. Yeah,
52 something, I think.
that's a good question. Let's see.
Yeah, a little over 52.
So 52.27, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So 52.27. So that could be one of our little blocks. We can block that thing out like that.
Mm-hmm.
We can remember it next week. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. That's kind of it. Only other thing is, let me just put a, we used to
One
call
by
this.
one.
No, the one by one, interestingly, one by one, we broke through today,
Yeah.
last week we came up to it
Mm-hmm.
and we fell back. And today we had enough momentum to get through. So I was thinking about the, let's see.
Parallel channel. Mm-hmm.
No, 1 by 2, right? So
Yeah.
here, and it just so happens to be, that
Right there.
yeah, it just happened to just cut right through the exact zone that we're talking about. So let's just keep it there and let's see what happens. And 3/8 and all this stuff kind of matches up. Everything looks good on paper. Looks like it's, it's on time and everything. So let's see. That's all I have. Of course, the other side is if we somehow, for some reason, we reverse on Monday or Sunday night, we take out 5104, then I think we have a whole nother thing happening, obviously. And so we'll have to wait and see about that. If we take out 5104 Monday, Tuesday, then, we're probably going to consolidate here a little bit longer.
And I think Barry, I want to take a second and point out this is really important because what you're seeing in a series of episodes is the approach that Barry and I take, right? You try and the first thing you got to do is find the trend, find the corner. Once you find the corner, after the first move that comes off that corner, you look for the first counter trend. And this is why we feel like we're at a critical spot, is because the counter trend is playing out now. And the question is it going to make a lower high? Is it going to do a false break? Are we going to take out those highs and keep going? And that's the question that we're looking for clues for. And this is the essence of finding the fast move, the fat pitch, whatever you want to call it in the market. It's the move, the sell or the buy after you make the corner. And that's what's potentially coming up.
Right. And especially when we have, a huge expiration like this.
Yep.
And we talked about it back then. You guys can check the old episodes, but we talked about this. I'm only showing this because we're tight on time. But, at the time, I don't know, a month back or so, we talked about how we had weekly cycles and all kinds of, we had monthly
cycles.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff expiring here. So, it's not like there wasn't any weight up there. There was, and there still is. So we're not forgetting that. We're always referencing off of that. until it gets taken out, only because it holds so much weight, right? And
That's
then
correct.
the first sell off was held at the half the square, which is fine. Now we're looking to see where the counter trend goes. Well, this was a good shot here. We had a couple of days down, but it wasn't quite enough. And now we're going to go higher. And this low here, we held here right on our support levels on the 30-minute chart, and we can get into that in a second. But anyway, yeah, that's it. Let's see what happens. We have a nice Gartley setting up. We'll see how that expires. Should be fun to watch, if nothing else. Well, before we jump to the weekly, let's take a look at the
30-minute.
let's take a look at 30-minute. Can you see the bars okay, or should I thicken it up a little bit?
No, it's fine.
Is it okay?
I mean, that's better. The
This is
darker's better. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll keep that.
It sure tested 50-58, didn't it?
Sure did. And not only that, I had this 50-40, and it's funny, I had that in gray, but
Right.
it's been there forever. If you guys
Right.
go back and look at the charts, and you can see how that was really the level. Sometimes you'll have another number a little bit under something, and you want to
Sure.
just keep it there for reference. And so that really held it. And then 50-58 ended up becoming sort of a pivot area, right?
The launch pad.
Yeah, launch pad. And this area was more the support, and the buffer zone was in here. On the first, we came off of, we held that 50-40 overnight. We jumped up on the news, went right to 51.27, sold back off, higher low, right? And then yesterday I saw the false break, and I called it out early morning and said, hey, we got a false break. This is probably going to go. And we always talk about the fast moves, and look at this, right?
There it is.
That's the textbook example for you guys of how a real false break should look like. And if you saw that morning drop, you know what a real false break, how it gets the fear right at the bottom. And again, you can see before we moved up, we held about the 50-58, sort of set up a little base there, jumped up, got about 51.04, held about there.
Which was your key level.
That was key level. And this is what we talk about holding above. You see how, and we've had this for, I don't know how long,
months.
Weeks. Yeah, maybe months.
Hey, Barry, and you know the other thing,
Mm-hmm.
really, really cool. That's your point, independent of anything that I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
The harmonic, I got the harmonic balance points, the new harmonic balance points. Guess what it is for ES?
5100. It's in here?
5104.
No way.
Exactly.
That's pretty wild. But that shows how these numbers and geometry and scales all work together.
That's right.
There is a method to this madness. So anyway, you can see how it held above. This is what we talk about, break above, hold above. So there it is. And so if you know that 5104, how it held, and this morning was a no-brainer. Ran up to 5162 level, came back to 5127. And then here we go. So we were, and we talk about holding about 5150. Well, we're well above that. And we put some time well above the highs end of the month from last month. So it looks good. And of course that opens the way for that, target to be tested up here. So
yes, it does.
Yeah, it sure does. So let's see how it works out. That's it for the 30-minute. And we post this 30 minutes posted every day on Twitter. So you guys can check it out, or X. And let's move on to the weekly. So here's the weekly chart. Let's try to keep it very simple. Not a whole lot to say here, other than, talk about fractals of fractals. Okay.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, right. So we have a Gartley here. Okay. And ABCD was met on the weekly. And now we're looking for a little fractal of that on the daily. Remember that little thing that we put on?
Yes.
On the daily thing right here.
Yep.
So it's beautiful how all this stuff works. Anyway, weekly, it's well off the highs. So, and we've had, it looks like, we're up 2 bars, but a bit of a struggle. You can see how we're backing and filling and these long legs. So
they keep rescuing it near the end of the week.
Yeah, right. Something like that. So it probably has a little bit more to go. Let's see how that works out. Not much to say other than that. I think that next week, everything's in the details. So I think it's better to focus on the daily 30-minute if you want to really catch it, catch it perfectly. Other than that, I think you guys have all the levels, and moving on to bonds.
It's interesting developments there.
Yes, yes. And I had got this insight when I was looking at bonds today. And especially because I was looking at this squaring out,
Hmm.
I was looking at the 45 by 90, which is nothing to sneer at. It's,
No, that's a good one.
you're right. It's something, it's a serious number, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
So I
I mean,
was
it looks like there could be a very good counter trend.
exactly. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking it's why not a counter trend? Why not come back to test 119 at
Hmm.
least, But I had this other sort of a insight, what would cause that? Well, maybe everybody's talking about rate cuts and getting it or not getting it or whatnot.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the best sort of the unexpected move, what do you always say? Like, the thing that would get everybody off on the wrong foot.
Right. Get on the wrong side. Yep.
Mhm. Would be to maybe do a one little cut and then raise them after that. for,
Wow. Wow.
for the next
Yeah.
few times, right? That
Yeah.
would really do that, and nobody would be expecting that.
Oh, that would be
And
ugly.
and it wouldn't surprise me if something like that wouldn't usher in stagflation. That would
Hmm.
be like the sort of
Hmm.
the yellow flags at the gate.
Right.
Um, so anyway, that's just some thoughts. But in the meantime, we have to respect the square. We did come down into, we'll get it when we get into the weekly, you'll see why this level is important and this
Hmm.
90 by 45 might be important. So we're turning here. And, we have to say, as long as it's above like 114 and a half, I would expect bonds to be on firm grounds, at least till we go up and test 19 and a half, this 120 level.
Hmm.
So we'll leave it at that. And only because we're at the half square, we really didn't slip under and hold and hold under it. You see how we
And it
came
had a
and
shot too. It had a shot to
it
do it.
had a full shot, man. It had
Yep.
all the everything laid out for it, but it didn't. So that's when that's when you have to look at the details that we talked about last time. And you want to say, well, what's
Hmm.
the price action? And we had all this, consolidation below that, and all of a sudden now we're above it. Okay, we have to respect that. So we'll watch it that way. And getting into,
There's your weekly.
yeah, so the weekly bonds, I kept talking about how this 144 by 216 is important, but the only thing that throws it off is, when I made a lower low
Right.
prior to that. So that's not a big deal, because if that's the case, fine. So we came back and made a higher low.
Hmm.
All right. And that would also warrant some kind of at least
At
a
least an ABCD, right?
yeah, I mean, ABCD wouldn't be out of the question.
Does that take you into resistance, basically?
Well, ABC would take us a little bit. Let me
A little
see.
bit above?
I haven't checked it. Let me see.
Hmm.
Well,
Oh, there you
yeah,
go.
there you go. Right to the 50%. Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? So
Right.
there, yeah. So there, I mean, that would be
Possible.
acceptable. And not,
Hmm.
yeah, possible,
Yeah.
acceptable.
Yep.
But I don't know what kind of story will get us up there, but we'll see. I mean, it's going to be
Hmm.
interesting. No doubt about that. Anyway, we're here for now. And we know we have trend lines, everything's in place. We'll see what we do. If we're going to consolidate it, we're going to actually make a run for it.
Right.
So we'll leave it at that for now.
If you're
Um,
short, be careful.
yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd be real careful.
Yep.
Mainly because we had this 144 by 216 here,
Yep.
backed up by the thing on the
The
daily that we
daily.
saw, right?
Yeah. The
This,
45 by 90.
yeah. So it's a little too much to fight.
Yep.
You don't want to be arrogant here,
No.
especially for a market that's been so good.
Yeah.
And all right, let's move on to crude.
Hmm.
So crude, what happened? We did get to the 50%, and we did talk about how that's being resistance. And as long as we can hold above 83, which is somehow, we can grind through this and get to 91. So what part of the story that didn't hold up was it couldn't really hold above 83, right?
No.
Like last week we talked about it, which is barely scraping by, trying to hold above, keep the head above water. If 83 was a water line, and then this week we start to slip, and we broke the trend line that we drew last week.
Hmm.
So it looks like it's, crude is going into consolidation mode, and great, let it do that.
Right.
And because there are a lot of energy related stocks that might open up some opportunities to get in during this,
Hmm.
probably the last decent correction. And so if that's the case, let it be. 73.5 is really the support. And holding above that will tell us a lot versus it's slipping under 73.50, and which would
Sure.
open up the way to, back to check the old bottoms, around 64.75. But I'm looking at the 73.75 zone to see what would happen. Come back. Maybe we'll do an ABCD just like all the other markets.
Yeah.
You know,
It's in there.
well,
Almost there.
yeah, it's very close.
Mhm.
And with crude, you never know if
Right.
that's going to do it. So if that does it, great. But it's still, it's not on that great. Above 83, it's in a place to like pick up momentum very quickly. It could really run if it were to go,
Yeah.
but it didn't. So down here, unless we get to 73 or so, I don't see a whole lot of almost like a spike reversal is not in the cards.
Here.
Of course, how dare I say that with all the stuff happening in the Middle East?
We'll see.
I might have to take that one back, but yeah,
Yeah.
I should be saying oil could do anything. Um, but well, I think my point was below 83, it's not so it doesn't have a power behind it.
Not so robust.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, it'll take some time to reel up again. So we
Hmm.
have some time, and oil's been pretty good. So maybe it's time for a breather
Hmm.
on that side. Let's take a look at weekly crude, which I'm running with a score of 60, which runs pretty well with crude.
Hmm.
And you can see, weekly's held above 60 degrees really well. And we're actually kind of bracketed in that first half square. So overall, yeah, we really couldn't move higher, at least to go up and test the half, which was 97. So I'm guessing this is going to be some kind of a correction consolidation and let it go ahead and do that. I think it's probably healthy.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
let crude finish up and we can get back to it when it gets into like a support level. So when do we get active on crude again? Well, we'll watch this ABCD, but we'll really be interested when it gets to 73, 75 level.
Right.
And then we can start looking at, if we have any squares off of here or what's happening off of this low. So we'll look at it next week. But for now, yeah, that's all we got.
Let it finish up.
Gold, well, we squared out at the high and it's behaving fairly properly like it should. It's backing off and consolidating, but at a very, very tight high level consolidation. It didn't sell off, not even to the 50% of the square.
Yeah, it's a bullish consolidation for sure.
Yeah, it's looking very good. And if it can hold above this 2260 level, it's still very bullish and very healthy.
Hmm.
So any kind of a consolidation above this 2260 I would consider it to be good and healthy. Is it ready to move up right now? No, it isn't. I think it's going to consolidate here for a little bit. We'll wait and see. That's what we watch for. So when he's ready, we'll talk about it. But for now, after this kind of a almost practically vertical move, I think it needs to have a little breather. And I
Burn
think
some time.
yeah, it needs to burn some time. And it's one thing we could say normal in the markets, right? That kind of a
Right. Right.
So here's the weekly, and of course we ran up into the 270, and that's where we called out the resistance, and that leg might be finished for now. It might be taking a little break, and that's exactly what happened. So for 3 weeks we've been on a sort of a consolidation corrective mode, and basis the weekly, long as we're above 2240, I think it's still in a very really strong position. So
Yes, it is.
yeah, so let's let it finish up and catch it on the other side.
Hmm. Copper started pulling back a little bit this week.
Yeah, copper did correct a little bit, pull back a
Mhm.
little bit, and fair enough. It's been consolidating here for
Yeah.
months and months, and so this was a fairly bold move for copper. Now, not just a bold move; it basically broke out. So
Yep.
now anything above like 428, it's above the first square, and we have this little support here. It's in a very bullish position above 428. And really the next resistance is 483. We talked about it last week.
Hmm.
So even though gold is pulling back, I think, if you're trading copper, watch it closely. And up above this level, the bullish side is definitely in play.
Hmm.
up until we get to 40, 80, 82, 83. Now, that said, I know there, wait till we look at there is a reason to be cautious. So
Hmm.
we'll look at that in a minute here. And the reason is this
Yep.
this sort of awkward looking ABCD that, copper went, almost to it. And in our business, we say that's close enough, mainly because we had the 90 there. And the main thing is these two legs are equal in time.
Hmm.
This leg, AB and the CD are equal in time. So that holds some water, especially on a weekly chart. So it's possible we also consolidate. And it'd be nice to see it consolidate around this 90 without dropping all the way down to 436 level, which is the low high on January of 2023. If we can consolidate it above that, oh boy, is it in a positive place.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, look at this. If you look at the bigger chart, we're definitely not down here.
No.
We're at the upper spectrum.
Yep.
And if you look at like the 2010 highs, I mean, those are the highs for a long time, and we're right there.
Yep.
It's right in the same zone. So
Consolidating up there would be very bullish.
yeah, that's the thing, right? So what's copper doing up here? Well, it's not coming for a visit. I think, this time around, it's going to get established. It's going to move, it's going to be a breakout.
Hmm.
And so for a breakout that big, you're going to have to see how the setup shows up. But anyway, that's why we want to be a little bit cautious. We want to wait to see how the daily behaves, before getting too bullish
Hmm.
after this ABCD had completed. Okay. Moving on to the dollar, square 60 again. We ran up into 30 by 30, and the ABCD was right there.
Yep.
Coming off the low, that squared out. So it's a very tight consolidation, was kind of bullish, but we really need to get above that 50% of the square to really pick up for the next half of the square, let's say. And if
And
we
you know
couldn't,
what? You know
Mhm.
what?
Yeah,
A rally in bonds, given the current environment, would fit with a weak dollar.
well, it's showing up already, right? And it showed up here first because it stalled at the ABCD
Yep.
and the square. So let's see what happens. It really, it stopped exactly where it should. If you look at these, support areas, the old highs over here. And now the key is, are we going to somehow hang on above that, or are we going to sort of slip? If we slip below, then, there's a much larger sort of a consolidation correction going on. So we'll watch that and see how that works out. So are we bullish right here? Yeah, we're a little bullish because we're above that 104.88. That's the level to watch. If we slip under that, I think then we'll switch. That's really the balance point for next week.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, dollar weekly. So here's the the big ABCD that terminated. It's another
Right into
Gartley.
the half
Yeah, it's another
square.
Gartley. Yeah.
Yep.
And we wanted to see, can it press through and get to 106 7 quarter, 3/4 or 107? It couldn't. And I was talking about holding above that line, 104, 105 would be really good. Yeah, we're just a couple of pips above that, but basically it looks like there's some kind of a correction, like you said, coming. So I
Hmm.
would just watch it closely for now. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, makes sense.
Yeah. And so here's the euro, not doing amazingly, but it's also, it held the support. We ran up and we got stuck at our 108 level. So really for the next week, again, we're left with 108. What are we going to do? If if we're below that, I would expect more consolidation and more weakness. If somehow we got to get above that, that means the dollar's giving out, and we can expect the euro to go up and test, the 109 area, 109 and a half, something like that. I would look for that, and
Hmm.
an ABCD up. Yeah, that looks about right. What else do we have to cover? The Hang
Hong
Seng,
Kong was
Hong
hot
Kong, yeah.
again.
Yep. We broke out, last week we talked about 1854 is the level we really need to break above. And boy, did
Yep.
we do that in spades, right? So
Man, people,
now,
you need to go back and look at the shows where Barry called the low on this because it was
right there.
unequivocal. It wasn't maybe, perhaps. It's a low in
Mhm.
China.
Yep. When the news was all negative, remember that?
Oh, couldn't have been
Right.
worse.
Yeah. So that's doing okay. It'll be continue to do well as long as we're above 1800, 18,000. looks like our old friend.
I'm going to talk about that
You're going to
today.
talk about that. Great. So
Yeah.
I don't have to talk. Well, let me pass it on. All right, Ben. So you can start here and then go on and cover all the commodities.
Yeah. We'll start with the NQs. Let's put the ABCs and the Gartleys on because they're all over the
Mhm.
place
Yep,
again.
yep. Might as well use them.
Yep. And give us a little target action here of where we can look
I mean, that
for.
zone is like perfect, man. If
Yeah.
if it all works out. So
Right.
we'll have to
So
see.
the key thing is, just like Barry was saying in the ES, is we've made higher lows here and here, and now we've made a higher high. We're pushing up through this full square. So we just have to see how it plays out. Do we come up into this target zone? It could even push a little bit higher, you know. But do we
Mhm.
come into this target zone and roll over? Do we go up, make a false break? Do we go up, sit on top of this half square and keep going? I mean, they're all possibilities.
Yeah,
They're all
but our
possibilities.
big target that was ABCD to see how that works out. So
Absolutely. And just to give you a number, you're talking about 18, 18,227. So 18,200 would be a decent target.
right.
Let's take a look at the weekly. The weekly's got a little more work to do. You can see we're second week we had an inside bar. We did take out the high. Barry's method, which is a good one, is whichever side gets taken out, usually it pushes and takes out the upside if it does that. So we'll have to watch. It really has to get through this half square, though. I mean, this full square.
Mhm.
The full square is, call it, say, 18,200. If we
Mhm.
can clear that, then then we're potentially pushing for the false break, or we could run.
Yeah.
You can't close yourself off to the idea that we're going to make a higher high and keep running. It's possible, right? We'll need to see the evidence, and we'll see the evidence in terms of price action if it actually happens. So it's nothing to fear. It's just something to observe. Let's take a look at the monthly.
Mhm.
The monthly has a lot more work to do. Of course, we have, we had a lot of good timing. The big one being this 180 months, which is 15 years
Mhm.
from the lows in '09 that we had at the high. We had an 18 month run to the high, which is also a good number. We weren't far off of a 45 from here. There was a 60 in play from a different low. So it's just a lot of cycles that ended there. The new month we're inside this down bar. So again, to really get things going, we've got to clear on a monthly basis. We got to clear 18,770, call it.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of work to do there, but we'll see. We'll
Yep.
let it play out. The key thing is why we're so adamant, why we're so focused here is if we make lower highs, like let's say we do this ABCD and roll over, that's big. That's the fat pitch we look for in every market that we track. A lower high off of a high, or a higher low off of a low.
Mhm.
It gives you that lower risk, high reward potential trade. So that's what we're looking here to see how it materializes and how it plays out.
Mhm.
Anything to add here on the NQs?
Well, let's watch the ABCD and see how all the indices play out. You know,
That's it.
yeah.
And we're coming into cycle time too.
It's gonna
As
be
it
epic. I mean, whatever happens from here, it's gonna be it's gonna be something to behold. So
And it's a great environment to trade
yeah,
because we're going to have
yes,
volatility,
yep,
and that's what we want.
yep.
We just got to frame the action. We got to, try and identify the proper levels to once we know a level gets breached that we identified, then we know, okay, one thing's more probable over another, and we can play. We can play the probabilities, and that's what we're trying to do here. Let's take a quick look at Bitcoin before we jump into the commodities. And the key thing I want to show you on this is, we're making lower lows,
Hmm.
which is not a bullish thing. And we're kind of riding this one by one rail.
Mm.
We did push up through it today. Now we got to see if we can get on Sunday or next week, a full bar above it, then we could say, all right, maybe it's gaining some traction here. We have a decent low in place. And let's check one thing. Since ABCs are all over the place these days, this is going to go lower. Yeah, a little bit lower there. So it's struggling. This is starting to look like distribution. Although we are above this is kind of the only sort of support wedge that we had, and we're well above that. So, I mean, if we can get above this full square, then I'd say, okay, things are looking better, and the correction may be over. Until we get above that, we're in a weak position, because that means we'll still be dancing with this one by one. Anything you want to add here on Bitcoin?
I would say it's still in a downtrend, even though we did come up to a square. So I think the upper square is really the place where we're going to know what's going to happen next. That 140 level.
Yeah, but that's what I say. We got to clear this for the bulls to be back in charge.
Yeah.
So let's see what it does. But it's definitely quieted down. Even the Bitcoin maximalists are kind of quiet. So that's probably a good sign for the bulls. All right, let's go to the on the commodity side. This week we got a very nice jump and activity increase in the grains. So we're going to spend some time on all three of the grains. We're going to take a quick look at silver, and then we're going to end on our old friend nat gas. Let's start with wheat. So what happened that was so important this week? Well, remember, once we find these corners, through squares, support, or on the half square or the full square, in this case, it wasn't, is we want to see higher lows and higher highs, right? So last week we had our higher high here. And this week we got another higher low and a reversal.
Right.
And once we clear this half square, which let's call it, what's that, 652, 653. Once we clear that area, then we're off to the races. Because basically we'll be, all this price action for 8-9 months will be below us. So, but you want to see these higher lows. You want to see it pushing higher, and this is what we're starting to get. And wheat was leading the pack last week. So I'm happy to see the price action this week giving us another higher low. And these are the kind of pullbacks that you can buy into. You get the pullback, and then you wait for the reversal. You got the reversal, and then you're back in, ready for the next move. So the daily looks good on wheat. Let's take a look at the weekly. What's important about the weekly? As we pointed out yesterday, we got that low came right on the half square. Big week last week. Big up week
this week.
And we got an inside week this week. If we rally next week, that's really, really positive, right? Because all the bears could summon is an inside week. They couldn't get a down week.
Yep.
So let's watch and see if we can take out those highs next week. That could be the move that pushes us. The other thing I'd say is, see these lows here? Look left.
Yep.
Under, sitting, all this is under us.
Yeah, I mean, that support area was great. Perfect.
Yep. Really, really good support. So the weekly is shaping up nicely. Let's take a look at the monthly. And what I want to show you on the monthly, again, it's sort of the same thing as the weekly. We had this big up bar, and then so far, we're pushing the highs already. Hopefully we're going to make a higher high this month, next week. The other thing is this half square. The longer prices can stay above that half square from a structural standpoint, it's really positive. Look at the prices from 2014 to basically 2021. They were all under there. So it's a key spot on a longer term basis. Anything else to add here on wheat?
I think it's setting up exactly where we were expecting. The lows came in nicely, good bottoming price action, and now it's starting to pull higher. So I think an ABCD would be at least a minimum target if we can get up there. but holding above this level. I mean, once we get above your pivot point there,
Yeah, that's
what's that 50% of the square above that level?
this is
650. Okay. So we
yeah.
really need to clear that 650, 51 area.
Yeah, then that gets us on top of all this.
Yeah. And then it's going to pull in some momentum.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So watch
Looks
your
good.
pullbacks if you're not in, and figure out a way to get in. It looks very good.
And if you want to think of a reason to get in, you'll find a lot of them coming up.
Well, apparently I didn't know it, but someone on X sent me a note saying it was bad weather in Brazil or something that was damaging crops, and so that's usually how it starts.
Yep. Yep.
Here's one that had another good week. Corn. So we had the move up off the lows, got stuck under the half square, pushed above it.
That got stuck above it.
Yeah, there's your pullback, get stuck on top, perfect structure. And then we start launching. And it's got a lot of overhead here that it's going to have to chew through, but this is what you want to see, right? This is the structure that you want when you're coming off what you think is a swing low or a pivot here. So it's doing what it needs to do to be bullish and to confirm the bullish price action. Let's go to the weekly. Why do I want to show the weekly? We had another up week and we broke this downtrend line. And as long as we stay on top of, let's call this area here, which is around 448, it looks bullish. So we've got a higher low and a higher high on a weekly now. That's what you want to see. Let's look at the monthly. We've already got a higher high for the month of May. We've escaped, which is last week what we were looking at saying, oh, we're on this 2x1 down off that high, off the Russian invasion. And now we've escaped that. So theoretically, we can move to the 1x1 over the next few months, take you up around 600. And it's, down bar, inside, up, up. Oh, and you'll like this one too, Barry. 22 months high to low. 22.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a good one. So corn looks really, really good. Anything to add there? Any other insight you want to impart on corn?
No, everything looks good. We've been covering it. You've been covering it ever since the lows came in, and this is the walk. Now we're starting to move higher and higher and higher, and you'll see it's going to catch some momentum soon and start rolling. So
yeah, there'll be some news that comes out, and then this thing will really fly.
Yeah.
And the people in the know, this is why we're getting this pattern. Let's jump over to beans. This has been the laggard, but this week,
a good
we
week.
got a higher high, right? Last week we were still waiting for it. We hadn't gotten that higher high yet, so we took out this high here. We made a higher low here. So now we've got 3 higher lows, 1 higher high. Now we got to take this out, this full square. Of course, see where it stops right on the week. Right on the full square. But next week, if we can, get a full bar on top of this full square, we could really start moving in beans as well. But this week getting that higher low was a good thing. Let's look at the weekly, give you the weekly perspective. So we have our second up bar after this higher low, and that's good. And we closed on the highs on a week, which I always like to see in these commodities. Shows you it was bid pretty hard. So now on the weekly, we have a higher low. We take out this high next week, call it around 1230. We take out 1230, then we got a higher high on a weekly as well. It's the anatomy of a bottom, right? Just go back and look. You can look here. Low, high. Here's the false break low, right? That you always see a lot of times in these markets. Come up, higher low. As soon as we take out these highs, there you go. That's what we're looking for. We're just looking for this kind of pattern. And this is on a weekly basis. Let's look at the monthly.
That's good.
Here's the monthly. Why do I want to show
better?
Yeah, the monthly looks better, right? Because look what we're sitting on top of, Barry.
Exactly. Yep.
This whole structure here, the sideways here that led to this move,
Mm-hmm.
the lows came right where they should, right on top of that, in that range.
Looks
We've
perfect.
got yeah, it's a nice setup here on the Gann fan. We were sort of tracking this 1 by 2 on the way down. Now we've gotten on top of it, so hopefully we can push up
Mhm.
over the next month or so to the 1 by 1 and then really get this thing going. Anything else to add here on beans?
Well, it's about to break out is what's about to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
So yeah, let's follow through.
Let's follow through. All right, let's go take a look at gold's little brother, silver. Why do I want to show you silver? So we knew we had a little square out here, and we said, okay, we gotta watch, look for a correction, which you'll actually see even better on the higher time frames. How that was pretty strong resistance it went into. But look where the correction stopped, Barry, so far.
Perfect, perfect.
On the full square and
Mm-hmm.
on this whole structure here.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we stay on top of this, call it 2640, 2645, we are in really, really good shape for silver. So if we chop around, go up, go down, consolidate, just basically burn time here. Don't get frustrated by it. It's really bullish if it can do that. And you'll see that on the higher time frames. Here's your weekly. There's the visual.
There you go.
Pretty nice.
Yep.
You can also see why we ran into resistance now too, right?
Yep.
Not only we had the half square, but that's where the highs were, during the pandemic.
I mean, really, the support level is at your lower 50% of the square right
Mhm.
there.
Right here.
And anything above that is just more bullish. I think
Yeah.
that's how
Stopping here is super bullish, right?
Yeah, very.
So, and that's where we've stopped so far. So let's see if that can hold and we can just sort of chop around, burn the cycle out, waiting for the next cycle to start to go up. It'll be a heck of a run because it'll be a lot like the gold. Remember we talked about gold doing that high level consolidation right around the all-time highs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It'd be the same type of pattern. Here's your monthly sitting on the full square.
Yep.
You can see it's making what we're doing is we're testing to see, are we going to transition from this
Mm-hmm.
to this, right? Where the new range will be in this square as opposed to this square.
Right. Correct.
And that's the battle that's going on right now. And given everything else that's happening, it looks like the odds are favoring that we push up and create this new level up top.
Mm-hmm.
But we know the level where we're wrong, right? This 2640, 2650, 2660 area's got to hold. And then we have the advantage. If it pulls back here, it doesn't mean it's bearish. It just means there's no edge for us. So that's the play with silver. Anything else you want to add on silver?
No, I think it's a perfect setup, and I mean it's beautiful that you're using all the monthly and the weekly charts because it's easy to see how it takes time for these things to set up. So it's good to watch it every week, and it's like in slow motion.
The monthly weekly give you like a really good, big picture view to where you're not caught up in every single little tick, right? You can step back and sort of, okay, what's the bigger picture? Where's the long-term money flowing in this? And it really does, like the athletes say, it slows the game down for you
Mm-hmm.
and makes it a lot easier to read the field.
Yeah.
All right, let's check our last one here, which is our old friend Nat Gas. Quietly
Quietly. Yep.
and without a lot of fanfare, it's
Mhm.
been sort of grinding with higher lows and now a series of higher highs.
Mhm.
Now look left, just like we looked at silver and we saw, oh, there's so much underneath us there. Look at what's above us here. So let's not get too excited. It's got a lot of work to do,
Mhm.
but it is something we need to pay attention to. Especially in light of we got this higher low here, and now we've taken out that previous high. So the next big level is the half square, which is call it 220.
225 area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
223, 224. We can take that out, sit on top of that. Now we've got something to build, right? We got something to build on because it'll be sitting on the top of this structure here, and it can chew through this, a lot of overhead that was built as this thing was going sideways before it, went down to the next level. But it turns out, as we discussed when these lows were made, that price is a value, and you'll see why when we look at the longer term charts.
Mhm.
Here's your weekly.
We talked about this, how this lower level was such good support. Now you
Yeah,
can see what happens coming off of that.
yeah, there's value here. And it's been proven historically that traders have stepped in and bought it
Mhm.
at that level. And then we talked about that there, even though we didn't have higher lows, we didn't have higher highs yet. We said it is a good value there based on historical, price patterns. And you really see it when you look at the monthly. I mean, going back to 95, 94.
Right.
Every time it's gotten down here, they bought it up. It didn't necessarily take off, but
Mhm.
what we were saying at the time was, the downside looks fairly limited. And now
Yeah.
we're starting to get some movement to the upside. But
Right.
you can see on a bigger picture basis, there's a lot of work to do
And a lot of room to run.
and a lot of room to run. That's right. So that's it for Nat Gas. Anything else you want to add on the Widowmaker?
I say let's follow closely and well, trade on the long side.
Yeah, let's see the setups. We'll keep you posted on X and obviously on the weekly show as need be. Barry, since I alluded to in the opening that we were going to talk about a new thing, let me throw the screen over to you and let's walk everybody through weekly crude, the square of the range. This is a concept that we haven't talked about before, but is an effective one.
So this is about using different ways to use squares.
Yeah.
We always talk about, square of 90, square of 72, and so forth and so on. And but there are lots of, there's square of the low, square of the high, just like you said, there square of the range. And we can do crude, we can do bonds.
Yeah, do weekly crude. I think
Yeah,
that's
okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
a good one to look at.
Square of the range chart, you can do it practically on anything, but obviously since it's the square of the range, you better have a range to work with. So that
Right.
makes,
And the square of the range is different than what we show you all the time, which is we're using fixed squares, 60s, 45s, 52s, 90s.
exactly. That's
And
exactly
this is more dependent on the range of the instrument that you're looking at.
Yeah, so let's do one and then we can all kind of focus on.
Mhm.
And the thing is, once you have the square, it behaves much like a regular square,
Yeah.
Regular square being a static square.
It's the same principles. Like you got to get on
Mhm.
top, stay on top. It's support, resistance.
Mhm. So we'll choose this low to the high of the range right there.
Mhm.
And of course, we're lucky. Our tools automatically kind of square that out. To square the range using the scale that we have, which is very simple, the scale of 1.
Mhm.
We have a square of 123. And 123 is the number of degrees from the high to the low
Right.
of the range. So what happens? I mean, so the idea of square of the range is, here we have a little bit of price action after the range, but basically you want to look at it, when you get a high, that's when you want to put it in. So let's say we had it in at this high, and you can see how the lows came right back into the 50% of the square.
I mean, it's perfect, right? It's not like a
Yeah.
fixed square, but the action around half the square shows you that it's vibrating along that line.
Exactly. So that's one way to look at it. So here's one where, you can look at this range and you can see it came down to 50% of the range, which is really good support. So when price is at the halfway point, you can use your other tools. You can square it up from, the other highs that are in here to see where the low comes in. You can look at other ways to measure the strength of that support. And you can trade off of that. So, and this square of the range just becomes another tool in your toolbox. and it helps you use it in another way. Meaning, we're not using the static ones like the 90s and the 60s and the 72s. We're actually letting the market decide, what the size of the square should be. So
Right.
let's
So
do
you're
another.
you're,
Go
you're
ahead.
basically taking that range and saying that's the vibration I'm going to use and seeing how it works going forward.
Yeah, and usually, market will bottom and top and bottom within that, long as we're in that range, because remember, the square of the range. What works out is timing works out pretty well usually, and also pricing works out very well. And you can also say, if you take this low and the high, and then you just do normal divisions like fib divisions or divisions of the,
Eights,
yeah,
right?
and this is what this is. This is really the divisions of the eighth. But what we also get is the time component,
Right.
so the two together works out really well. And on the daily, it works well. And let's take a look at another example. Well, let's take a look at bonds,
Okay.
just to pick a different market. Get this out of the way.
And you got a big range there.
Well, we got lots of big ranges. So, I mean, the beauty of a range is we don't know, it doesn't really care what happens in the future. We were looking at something in the past. So, that would be a range. This would be a range. And well, let's take that range.
Okay.
And
Is your chart one by one?
I think it's 0.5, but we can check that. Yeah, it's 0.5. So here we took that range, and it's 97 degrees in price. And you can see it also marked off every 97
In time.
in time. And if you look at it, you can see where price and time will come in handy at some turning points. But mainly, like on a daily, it would make a big difference. Like we'll see how that works out. But on a weekly, I would say, I mean, look at how, well, let's
Price
just
and
take,
time right there, boy.
yeah, let's take this 50%. Let's say we got it here, came down to here. You can easily see how we're not, selling off, we're weaker below that, which we were, which is 50%, but then we got on top of it, had some strength. Now we're just hugging it. I mean, of all the places to consolidate, we're right at the 50% of the square, right?
Right.
And you can see how we started making lower highs, lower lows, and eventually slid down into, I think we have a quarter of a square here. Let me turn all the squares, divisions here. Okay. Just so you guys can see what all that looks like. So it came down to, let me turn on the 1/3. No, get that off. So we came down into about a quarter of the square. We sat on top of the quarter here, got under a little bit, higher lows, broke above it. And now we're looking at the dotted lines, right? How are we doing against those? And here we have the dotted lines. You can see how price action, we stopped here, stopped here, stopped here. You see that? How that's a very
on the
solid
eighth.
level,
Yeah.
right? On the eighth. And that is, we talked about 3/8 today. So that's the 3/8 level. You see how important 3/8 can be? And we eventually, broke above, came back to retest 3/8, got on top. So here's where it gets really interesting, right? So here's the 50% line, which you wouldn't have any other way without that, right?
Right.
So here we sit on top of it, sit on top of it.
And we
rallied,
go.
Came back, sitting on top of it. And so it goes on, right? And then we broke above. Now we're above the range. So we'll have to figure out, once it leaves the range, it's not in the range. But what it did help you was kind of navigate the in between the states, right? In between the range is really the hard part to navigate, because it's usually consolidation of some type, because it's not running. So that's why square of the range is really important, because anytime we're between a high and a low, kind of like where we are now, in the S&P, for example.
Yeah.
We're between high and low. What's it going to do? Is it going to go higher? It's going to lower. But by looking at the levels like we do, and this is a good working example of that, looking at the levels and looking at how price behaves against it, we can kind of make a case for the direction. And here, as soon as we got above the 3/8, we knew, it's on the way up, got above 50% on the way up, held above 50%, very strong, and went up to the full range. So that's one way to use it. Now, in some markets, it's super interesting because look at this, talk about bonds ranging. We took
Wow.
exactly that and put it on the other low, and that ends up becoming exactly the same range.
Wow.
Talk about control, right?
That's the vibration for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So that's the vibration. And
Hmm.
so we came off of that again. We got the 50% level, got below and wrapped around it, consolidating. This triangle is perfectly on cue. You can see the middle of where the two things connected exactly at the dash line. Just happens to be, I never even saw this square before. I'm just saying,
Right.
it just shows how well the geometry holds. So the key thing with the 50% line, and you might be going, well, it's going back and forth. How do you know? Well, if it's going back and forth, you're not really trading because you're waiting for the pattern to sort of kick in. So in this case, first we slid under. So this is all on the short side. And then, 1, 2, 3, guess where it gets stalled out? 3/8. So I'm giving you guys like the huge hint here, whoever's left watching at this late stage of the podcast, right?
Right.
So this is how you use the 3/8, 3/8, 5/8. We talk about that, but you guys want really see real examples, knowing this held, knowing that held. I mean, how good is that?
Yeah.
So then we went to 5/8. We talk about 3/8, 5/8, right? So we were in 3/8, 5/8 resistance. So we're between that in that quarter square. And it's consolidating clearly because we had this triangle drawn in. We were waiting for it to break. Broke to the downside, came back to check in. Where did it come back to check in? Exactly at the 50%
50%.
level. Exactly.
Hmm.
And then, it reverses and that's where you sell it. And there you go. Went right through the range. We broke down into a new range. So that's another thing to notice, you guys. Like we've been, on this for a while. The first range we tested, the lows were in 2014, right? So we did that one. We did the second run, and now we broke that range and we took out the lows of that range. Now we're under that. So this is why, when we talk about, hey, I'm still bearish about this or the other thing, we're looking at these other levels and other squares and seeing what's happening, and that's how you can use other dynamic tools like these squares to help you formulate what's happening. So if we go up and take that, put that square on the high, you can see, it was 1.5 squares down where we started finding
50%.
support. Yeah.
Hmm.
Right. But look, like this low, this last week was
Perfect.
exactly on the thing. So you see, it can give you perspective and a different frame. And so this is the thing, you have to kind of mentally be able to juggle the frames, juggle the squares, and still be able to pull it all together at the end of the day to make your trade. And
Hmm.
and all I can say about that is, if you practice, and slowly increase the how you use different squares and how you can combine it and when to combine it, it can only help because it gives you another lens to look at the market through.
Yeah, there's a lot of art to it, and we wanted to introduce it to you. We'll keep doing this at the end of shows. So, Barry, thanks for doing that for us. Great review today. Everybody, good luck next week. This cycle wise and timing wise, a lot of stuff coming up. So be on alert and rest up this weekend because next week should be fun.
Thanks, Ben. Good job. And yeah, you guys have a great trading week. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.